H7256-A.
Vice Chairwoman Messier, please.
Thank you, Speaker. H7526-A is a concurrent resolution extending the governor's executive powers to no later than March 31st. The current executive order 22-12 is set to expire on February 14th, 2022. The concurrent resolution would ensure a measured return to normalcy after seriously weighing important testimony provided to us by some of the leading public health and infectious disease experts in the state and nation, as well as testimony from the public, along with testimony from administration department heads and agencies. Please remember that this resolution is not a mandate. The governor can terminate executive orders at any time as they are no longer necessary. Finally, this resolution permits the governor to issue any necessary executive orders to handle the current situation while putting the public on notice during the winding down period. This is a good and essential bill, and I move passage.
Vice Chairwoman Messier moves passage, seconded by Leader Blazajewski, Chairman Abney, Representative Morales, Chairman Craven, Representative Handy, Chairwoman Fogarty, Chairwoman Ruggiero, Speaker Pro Tem Kennedy, Deputy Speaker Lima, Representative Agello, Representative Kazar, Chairman Azanaro, Chairman Hull, Deputy Whip Ackerman, Chairman McNamara, Chairman Bennett, Representative Diaz, Representative Giraldo, Chairman Solomon, Representative Potter, Representative Felix Whip Kazarian, Representative Alzate, Representative Magor, Representative Kislak, Representative Barros. Is there any, Representative Bia also seconding? Any other seconds? On the bill, we have some lights. I will go to Deputy Speaker Lima, and then I'll come to Leader Filippi. Deputy Speaker Lima, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And while I'm up, may I please be recorded in the affirmative on items number 1 and 2?
So ordered.
Thank you. I was against extending the emergency powers of the governor, primarily because I am absolutely opposed to mandating masks for our children. And I plan to vote no on this legislation. But Governor McKee's gutsy and well-reasoned decision to end our children's mass incarceration on March 4th convinced me to support this extension. And with the school vacation coming up, the extension limits our children's mass incarceration to approximately 10 days. The reason for this extension, because I said, why not do it now? I wanted it right away, is to give our local communities time to come up with a plan to implement procedures to end mass incarceration. It gives them the time to listen to the parents, the community, and base their final decision on accurate and verifiable data, not political rhetoric. Governor McKee is committed to getting real data that paints an accurate picture of our children's risk from the virus, and this extension will give him time to investigate the health department's past findings. I mean, I remember picking up the paper and reading 3 children in Rhode Island die in the hospital with COVID. I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? This is the most least vulnerable group. What happened? Upon further examination, the health department had admit, yes, 3 children in Rhode Island died with COVID, but not because of COVID. They died because of other things. So you can't make a decision unless you get actual facts. So, with the data certain in ending mass incarceration, the extension will ensure the continuation of some of the very important other executive orders that the governor outlined in his statement. I mean, there's things here to get relief for teacher staffing, for school bus drivers. These are things that are very important to our state that should continue. I want to stress, the main reason that we are here near ending our children's mass incarceration are because of the actions of our courageous moms of our state. Moms, you did this, and you should be proud, and you deserve our thanks. Please join me and stand in congratulating the moms for their hard work and helping us come to the end of this mass incarceration. Please thank the moms. Please stand and thank the moms. Thank you. They started a movement, and it's going to spread and spread and spread. It's going to be moms and truckers making America right again. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'm going to go to Leader Filippi, and then I'm going to go to Speaker Pro Tem Kennedy after. Leader Filippi. Just a moment, please.
Thank you, Speaker. Representative Lima is always a hard act to follow. I notice there's a lot of absences today, so I hope we can still have a robust discussion.
I have no doubt.
Mr. Speaker, is someone for managing this? Do you know?
I would defer to Leader. If you have a particular, Leader Blazajewski, if you have a particular question, you can address the chair, and between Deputy Chair Messier or Leader Blazajewski will get you an answer.
I'll ask the question, and whoever wants to respond can take the floor, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. During Rep. Messier's introduction of the bill, it was stated that we received testimony from leading public health and disease experts. Who would that be?
Well,
I'll defer to Leader Blazajewski.
Mr. Leader, on top of getting testimony from many of our departments, the Governor's Office, the Department of Health, Buda, DBR, RIDE, DLT, DOT, DOR, Veterans, and PUC, we received, and it was just distributed to everyone, I believe, many letters and emails from prominent doctors in our state, infectious disease experts, other experts who in public health, who have said that we need to have a reasonable way of responding to the current situation. Yes, the numbers are improving, but we need a winding down period.
I understand. I just want to name. So I'm sorry. Did any of them come before a committee to testify? I know we got a lot of letters, but I seem to remember the Department of Health only sent a PR representative. The Department of Health didn't send a doctor to our committee to answer questions. So I don't know if I missed that. Was a doctor ever sent from the Department of Health to our committee to testify?
I don't know the answer to that, but I will tell you that we got a lot of testimony from medical experts in favor. We got a lot of written testimony against, both for and against. There was plenty of ample, and I'm quite sure that you, along with everybody else, got, because I was checking the emails and they were to all, and they were to CC the entire body.
Those would be the moms and the dads, I presume. So my point, Mr. Speaker, and I'll be brief, I don't want to belabor this. The Department of Health sent a PR representative to answer questions from our committee. Good man, nice guy, a friend. They didn't send the director of the Department of Health or the acting, director, or any one of the scores of doctors below them to answer questions from our committee on this important resolution. In my opinion, that tells us everything we need to know. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Leader. Speaker Pro Tem Kennedy, and then I will go to Chairman Abney.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and ladies and gentlemen of the House. I rise in support of this. Obviously, every one of us have been bombarded for the last week and a half or two with emails in our inboxes, whether it was from moms and dads, whether it was from grandparents, whether it was from people from the medical community, and I received many of those. In fact, there were 3 of them that arrived prior to the previous hearing that the committee took a vote on Tuesday regarding that. We've all been inundated with them. But I'm rising here today in support of this for a reason. Because we're finally reaching that point where we have a time definite in which this is going to finally run its course. We are passing this. The governor, he can choose to let it go to the final date in March, or he can choose to wind it down even sooner. We already know that he made the decision earlier this week to start to wind down the mask requirement for the children in schools. Wonderful. It's not going to address the issue of those children riding on school buses because that's a federal mandate. So if they're taking a school bus going back and forth to school, they're still going to have to wear a mask. But while they're in the classroom or at school or in a sporting event, they're going to be able to have that relaxation of the mask mandate. There have been a number of mandates, or excuse me, executive orders that have been passed and signed by the governor, so to speak, when he issued them. Among them were the requirements for the masks in school. We've already had a response regarding that. I think one of the executive orders that has turned out to be enjoyed by many, many people has been allowing the remote participation in public meetings. I talk to people all the time in my district who appreciate the fact, and in fact, I talk with the town council people who tell me there is more citizen participation because they can do it remotely. When that executive order goes away, so does the remote access. And keep in mind, we've utilized that same remote access to allow our members who have not been able to make it to the State House to still participate in the committee process here at the State House. When the executive order goes away, that process also goes away, ladies and gentlemen. Along with that, one of the other executive orders, which has actually been helpful, as we have seen teachers retire, as we've seen teachers who have been concerned about their health, that they're not able to get into the classroom, one of the executive orders has allowed for the increase of teaching and administrative staff capacity, for retired teachers to be able to come back into the classroom and be able to impart the wisdom to the students. When the executive order goes away, I fear that we may see that particular process also go away for those retirees. And many of those retirees have actually been happy to get back into the classroom. But again, they're there because of an executive order. So I rise in support of this because, again, we now have a time certain to run through in the coming days. And I'm sure there are going to be people marking, just as they mark off the calendar to Christmas, they're going to be marking the calendar to the end of this particular crisis. So with that, I urge you to support this. I think this is the proper way to do this. I think we, after hearing from the medical community, reading the letters from the medical community, and recognizing the fact that we have this process now in place, I think we can bring this to a satisfactory conclusion. Yes, it's going to take a few more days, but I think in the end, I think people will be happy when we reach that satisfactory conclusion. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Speaker Pro Tem Kennedy. Chairman Abney, and then we'll go to Chairman Craven after Chairman Abney, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My colleagues in the House, as you know, I don't get up and talk on very many bills, and there's a reason for that. And I don't get involved in what an individual thinks about a particular bill, because I would never, ever, never try to guess why a person does that. You know, we're all elected officials. We all have constituents that we're responsible for, and we all have our internal self that we have to deal with. This reminds me of deja vu about, I think it was 2 years ago maybe, when four people in this state, when the COVID crisis first hit, had to make a decision that determined how the initial fight was going to occur. And I was one of them. It was not something I asked for, but it was something that, because I'm an elected official in the position I'm in, I was required to give my best information on that. And I see this as the same thing for me. I would never, ever again, as I said before, try to tell any person here how to vote. But at some point in time, you have to look at the big picture of what you're trying to do. I don't think there's anybody here, certainly me, who likes to be mandated to do anything personally. But I don't live in a world by myself. So when I was trying to make the decision, I believe it was 300 million, I can't remember what the number was, that we were being asked to borrow to be able to face this COVID situation, I got hundreds, if not thousands, of personal telephone calls from individuals who were giving me their side of their perspective. No, you shouldn't borrow money to do this. We don't know what's going to happen. Yes, you should, because we don't know what's going to happen. And I respected that, as I respect this. But my comments are basically to some of the newer colleagues that we have, because my guess is that most people have made up their minds about what they want to do. But I would say this. Just as we ramped up to do what was absolutely important for everybody in this house, your family, your friends, I think we should also, in steps, ramp down. Now, maybe that's just the military in me. I don't know. What I do know is that if you have time to plan to get the mission done, you have a better chance of getting that mission done without a tremendous amount of casualties, as if you did something just on the spur of the moment. You can't take politics out of what we're doing. I get that. But what I do get is that there are a lot of smart people in this room. We're all heading for the line of demarcation, which means that we are about to kick this thing into you-know-what. We're going to get there. But we're arguing over how we're going to get there. And to me, that's the tragedy in what we're doing. I would just say decisions like this are tough. You weren't elected to come up here just to do easy resolutions that were always easy. This is tough, and I respect whatever decision you make. But I do say that it is our job to look at the bigger picture. And I know that, and I read the paper, listen to the radio, and I've got 2 grandkids in school, 3, actually. So I understand what people are saying. But I also understand that if we do this in steps, and I think this is one of those, as you notice, I'm not arguing about, what person said this or said that, or what doctor said this or said that. I'm talking about a strategy that gets us from 0 or to confusion to one where we can all take our masks off, where we can all have faith in each other. That's what we're trying to get to, and it's how we're trying to get to it. But I understand this is an election year. We're politicians. I have people in my district who are against this. I understand that. But don't be afraid to make tough decisions, because once your constituents know that you are afraid to make tough decisions, just be careful. And I know everybody here, all of you are smarter than I am, but certainly the newer ones, it's tough. But remember, you weren't sent here just sit here and look pretty. You were sent here to work and to make hard decisions and to make it to the best of the ability that you have. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Craven, and then Representative Morales, please. Should be on.
Can you hear me now? Yeah,
Yes,
thanks.
we can.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of your bill. This is one of those moments that we get elected to come here, as Chairman Abney just indicated. I can think of a half a dozen votes, since we're both in the same class that we took, where I remember one in particular, a fellow that became a good friend of mine afterwards called me out and said, "You people, you young people, you're going to get beat in the election." And I told him on the floor, I'd rather stick to the oath I took to support and uphold that flag and lose than not and win my next election. I feel the same way now. This is a subject matter that is far more complicated than most of us, if not any of us, can understand. I read those letters. I actually have followed Dr. Jenny and the fellow who I can't remember his name, he's the dean of the medical school. They're the talking heads on COVID for the last year and a half, and I was proud to be a Rhode Islander to see them. But I know, and I'll admit for myself, I have COVID fatigue. I'm sick and tired of this. I don't want to put on a mask. I can tell my mood has changed. I get aggravated with people. I find myself sometimes becoming someone that I have to check in with myself to say, are you going crazy today with COVID fatigue? But this is not about me. It's about keeping the hospitals open for people who need services that otherwise won't have a bed there if it weren't for the fact that when we take our mask off willy-nilly, if we did it tomorrow, there would be far more cases than we will if we follow the governor's order to March 4th. And by the way, Friday we could take our masks off. Here's one interesting thing, though, and I learned it just last night. One of the jobs that I do when I'm not here, I represent the Exeter West Greenwich School Committee, and I was at a meeting last night. Guess what they're going to do with reference to the termination of wearing masks? They're going to have an education process and a vote amongst parents. And they said that takes time. I didn't know that March 4th was going to be the end of schools. And so I offered to them, I said, I've got some great letters that they sent, that these major league doctors have sent to the speaker. I'll send them to you. You can distribute them throughout the parents, throughout the district. They thought that was a great idea. We'll have time to educate them. Educate them as to what? RIDE, Rhode Island Department of Education, still runs the school systems. And guess what? One of the things that really ticked people off that still have kids in the school system, I don't, mine have graduated and gone on to some other successes, is that if you are exposed and you don't have a mask on, you got to wait 10 days at home, quarantining. If you got a mask on, 5. Don't you think the people that are mad should have an opportunity to know that that's a consequence of taking the mask off tomorrow? Don't you think they should know that? I think they should. And I think some of the people that we're all talking about that are angry would say to themselves, geez, I didn't know that. I'm glad I did. I would have been out of work. So there's more to this than we really all know. But as Deputy Speaker Kennedy or Speaker Pro Tem Kennedy said, we're almost at the goal line. And as one of the people, and I'm not stealing their words, but talked to me recently, they talked about don't spike the ball on the 5-yard line. Let's wait till we get there. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Chairman. Representative Morales, please, and then we will go to Representative Newberry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this resolution because as lawmakers, we should be governing in accordance to science and data-driven metrics, not political rhetoric. And I want to be clear, and I want to drive these points home because it cannot be said enough times on this House floor. Number one, our hospitals and nursing homes are struggling as they are overflowing with patients while being severely understaffed. For specific context as to what that means, it means that intensive care units are at 90+% capacity. Hospitals are unable to conduct surgeries and other preventative care, and our National Guard is still being called in to support staffing with little signs of actually slowing down. Number two, Rhode Island's COVID transmission rate is among one of the highest in the country given our state's dense nature, leaving us vulnerable to another surge, especially if the Omicron or Delta variant continues to mutate. Just today, I was speaking with local housing authorities who advised me that they are preparing their staff and tenants for a third wave of COVID based on guidance from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Number 3, vaccination rates for our urban youth, predominantly youth of color, is well below 45%. Therefore, if we're going to keep our students within schools and away from remote learning, then the least that we can do is ensure that the option for our students and underpaid educators is to ensure that the option to be safely masked is still on the table. Well, I understand that the governor has announced that schools starting next month will be able to lift their quote-unquote mask mandate. I'm confident that our urban school districts will listen to science, not fear-mongering rhetoric, and recognize the importance of keeping our children safe, especially youth who are immunocompromised and have pre-existing conditions. Number 4, the general public and all of our colleagues need to understand that the impact of COVID, it's not just temporary on one's health. Instead, the virus does have long-term effects that are detrimental, especially on young people, that being youth and young adults. Such health effects include regular fatigue, shortness of breath, increasing anxiety, sleeping disorders, and neurological damage. In other words, COVID-19 is not the common flu or the common cold that some people are trying to spew as being a way of downplaying this virus and desensitizing the pandemic we are in. The same pandemic that unfortunately has led to over 3,000 lives here in the state of Rhode Island to be lost. And now number 5, the extension of this emergency order ensures that we preserve important measures in place that allow our retired teachers to return to work, and at the same time, and most importantly, require that the general public, specifically workers, follow isolation and quarantine requirements, which employers must also respect and comply with. Therefore, it is imperative that we pass this resolution. Otherwise, we are signaling a green light for further COVID exposure, hospitalizations, and long-term health effects on the people of Rhode Island. While we will continue to hear somewhat extreme and inaccurate rhetoric, I want to be clear that this has never been about living in fear. This is about living in the reality that we are in and urgently taking action as the lawmakers of this state. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Morales. We will go to Representative Newberry and then Chairman Azanaro, please. Representative Newberry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, I just want to get to the point Leader Filippi was getting to, is whatever you stand on this resolution, the performance by the Department of Health at the hearing was disgraceful. Yeah, there was letters submitted by doctors. I get that. There was a lot of data-driven testimony by people opposed to this resolution. There was not one person at that hearing from anywhere that testified in favor of this resolution with any type of data or backup. Not saying it doesn't exist, saying it wasn't there. And I find that just disrespectful to this body. But while we're on the topic of this issue, there's a lot to talk about in here. This will not be, unfortunately, the first time I get up today. But I do want to focus on the issue that's drawing attention, which is the school masking requirement. And I have some data for you. First, the White House itself said a couple months ago that 2020, 24% increase in emergency room visits for mental health for children ages 5 to 11, more than 30% increase in visits between 12 and 17 years old, and that suicide is the second leading cause of death among people ages 10 and 24. Now, a lot of people are under stress throughout this pandemic. I'm not saying it's related to masks, but they certainly don't help when you keep kids masked in school all day. More importantly, in the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health, there was a 2021 study that reviewed the finding of over 65 publications concerning mask use. The study listed the following adverse health consequences of wearing masks. And I'll read these quickly because I do not want to bump up too far on my 5-minute time limit. Increase in dead space volume outside the mouth nose for carbon dioxide accumulation. Increase in breathing resistance. Increase in blood carbon dioxide. Decrease in blood oxygen saturation. Increase in heart rate. Decrease in cardiopulmonary capacity. Feeling of exhaustion, increase in respiratory rate, difficulty breathing and shortness of breath, headache, dizziness, drowsiness, decrease in empathy perception, and impaired skin barrier function with acne, itching, and skin lesions. I know a lot of us have probably experienced these. Some of them are common sense, some may not be. The study concluded the described mask-related changes in respiratory physiology can have an adverse effect on the wearer's blood, gases, subclinically, and in some cases also clinically manifest, and therefore have a negative effect on the basis of all aerobic life, external and internal respiration, with an influence on a wide variety of organ systems and metabolic processes with physical, psychological, and social consequences for the individual human being.
Representative Newberry, just a moment, please. State your point of order, please, Representative McGaugh.
My point of order is that I'm not sure that this is relevant. What we're discussing here is the executive order.
Can you use your microphone, please? I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. My point of order is that this is a bill to extend the executive order. This is not a bill about a mask mandate. And so I would like the representative to stick to the order at hand, which is the executive order.
Thank you. The parliamentarian ruled that this is part of the bill, so we're going to allow, but thank you for that point, and Representative Newberry may continue, but we have limited time. So
Well, Mr. Speaker, this is one of the most important bills we're going to pass. I appreciate the very correct ruling from the parliamentarian. I would like to reclaim my time that was lost with the wasteful point of order, and I'd like to point out, as the parliamentarian just...
We stopped your clock.
Thank you. As the parliamentarian just ruled, one of the executive orders we're extending is directly related to the school mask mandate, Executive Order 21-87. So since we're talking about data and science, which were not present at the committee hearing, I think it's relevant. So I will continue. Actually, I just finished that section on the negative health impacts of wearing masks. Now, let's talk about the CDC. Something that anybody with common sense knew 2 years ago is that cloth masks were useless. But now we have CDC confirmation that cloth masks really don't do anything. That came out a few months ago, confirming the obvious. Most of the mask wearing we see anywhere, including in this chamber now, as I look around, are cloth masks that don't do anything. But let's put that aside. Let's assume, for the sake of argument, that some of the scientific data out there regarding N95 masks is correct and that they have some effect. Let's talk about what the current requirements are to effectively wear an N95 mask. And remember, we're talking about kids in schools here right now. Before handling the mask, must wash your hands thoroughly with soap and water or apply a solution with at least 60% alcohol on your hands. Must inspect the respirator for any tears or damages. Don't use it if it looks deteriorated or soiled. Must cup the mask in your hand with the nose piece facing outwards and the straps hanging below your hand or facing the floor. Must place the mask under your chin and over your nose. There should be no gaps between your face and the respirator. The CDC recommends certain facial hairstyles for workers who must wear tight-fitting masks like N95 respirators. Beards, some mustaches, and sideburns can lift the mask, such as the one worn by the representative of the Department of Health at the committee hearing, allowing particles and vapors to enter the available space, and individual facial hairs are not large and dense enough to filter these substances. Must pull the upper strap over your head and position it at the back of your head. Same for the lower strap, but let it rest below your ears. Must conform the metal strip on the mask to conform to the shape of your nose. Must adjust the respirator right, left, up, or down until you get the best fit. Must conduct a user seal check. The mask's manufacturer usually offers instructions for this. In general, you can test for any air leaks by placing your hands over the mask without changing its current position on your face, then perform one or both of the following. Again, we're talking here about kids in schools, young kids, elementary school kids. Very, very few of them are following these requirements, which means wearing these masks, even the ones that supposedly stop the virus or do a good job of cutting down, is theater. Let's talk about mask cost. Oh, it's a good time to move my amendment, Mr. Speaker, if I could.
30 seconds,
I would like to move LC 004398/4.
Just a moment, please. Representative Newberry moves an amendment, LC 004398/4, seconded by Representative Price, Representative Place, Representative Roberts, Representative Nardone, Whip Chippendale, Representative Quattrochi, and Leader Filippi. The amendment is in play. You should refresh your calendars, and it should be on your iPads. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll read this in for the record. It's very brief for the people who may be paying attention at home. Whereas the Rhode Island Superior Court found that Rhode Island school children were incurring irreparable harm from the adverse effects from the requirement that they wear masks throughout the school day, including physical and emotional discomfort, and interfering with the children's ability to interact with teachers, and it goes on, I'd like to insert the following language. Essentially, I'm not going to read this. I will tell you what it does. What it does is it prevents the extension of Executive Order 21-87, which is the school mask requirement executive order, and prohibits the governor from continuing that. I will briefly finish my talk about statistics and explain the rest of my rationale on this amendment. Mask cost. Surgical masks, which by the way the CDC says are not a reliable level, do not provide a reliable level of protection from inhaling smaller airborne particles and are not considered respiratory protection. Surgical masks, the average weekly cost per mask is $1.40, disposed after one use. N95 masks, the average weekly cost per mask is $2.03. Dispose after 5 uses. And KN95, the average weekly cost per mask is $1.60. Dispose after 5 uses. I only point that out because using the so-called proper mask is extremely expensive for a lot of people. Just want to add that as well. The bottom line is this, Mr. Speaker. The governor just came out and said the indoor mask mandate is going to end, I believe, tomorrow. Conveniently right before Super Bowl weekend and all the restaurants and parties that take place, sort of like the new mask requirement that he implemented on an emergency basis back in December, but it didn't take effect until after the last shopping weekend before Christmas. I'm sure a lot of science involved in that decision. Bottom line is, mask wearing in schools, we know, has no discernible impact on the spread of Omicron. You can see studies from around the country. Arizona, for example, had no mask requirement over the last few months. California did. The testing, the transmission rate was the same in both states. There is no evidence out there that school masks prevent transmission relative to places that do not have school masks. There's no studies on this. And the thing that really gets me, Mr. Speaker, is that we're going to drop the mask mandate tomorrow for everybody else, but not for the kids in the schools. Because what? Because science? I know, with all due respect, Deputy Speaker Lima, I know you talked about it gives the school committees and such time. I got an email from my school superintendent today. They're going to drop the mask mandate in North Smithfield or make it optional as soon as the governor's does. All right, it's good. I agree. I'm not complaining. I'm simply saying it doesn't take time. It really doesn't. Now, people can do what they want to. I know Representative Morales is hoping that his city of Providence keeps it in place. God bless the city of Providence who want to do that. If your town or city wants to do it, that's fine, I guess. If you want your kids to go to school and wear masks, that's fine, I guess. But the bottom line, and I'll conclude with this, the kids don't take this seriously. Frankly, most of the people in this room don't take mask wearing seriously. I know you don't. So let's not pretend otherwise. Our children don't do it. It breeds disrespect. Some of you do, by the way, so don't get up and yell at me if you do. Some of you do. Most of you don't, and I know that. The bottom line is the kids don't take it. They don't respect it. They don't respect government that acts like this. This accomplishes nothing. It's time to end this. We should pass this amendment and end the school mask mandate.
Thank you. On the amendment, it's been moved and seconded. I have some lights. Leader Blazajewski, please, on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the House. I rise in opposition to this amendment, and I'm glad Rep. Newberry took so long with his presentation because I knew I recognized this court case that he's citing here, which is this Superior Court action, because I've read this case. It says here, irreparable harm. This is, at best, a drop of truth in an ocean of lies about this case. I've read this case. Well, here's what this case says. This is the Southwell.
Just a moment, Leader.
This is Southwell versus McKee.
Just a moment. State your point of order, please.
Yeah, point of order. And I mean this respectfully because we are friends, okay? And I know this is tough. I didn't do an ocean of lies about that case. I cited that section of that case, and I would point out, and I will sit down, that the state was ordered to produce its data to support school masking, and as of a couple days ago, they still haven't. They missed the deadline. I'll leave it at that. But please, I don't think you meant to suggest that I was lying, but if that was your intention, I'd appreciate it if you'd back off. Thank you.
Continue, Leader Blazajewski, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So let's actually look at what this case says. This is Southwell versus McKee. It was decided on November 12th, and it doesn't hold what Rep. Newberry says it holds. In fact, it ruled in the opposite. It ruled against the plaintiffs. And it did it based on the balance of equities. And I'll tell you exactly what this court case said. And this is the basis. Let's keep in mind, this is the basis of this amendment. Here's what this court case says, and I'll read it to you. Mr. Speaker, members of the House, this is what this case says. Quote, even with the recognition that the wearing of the mask creates some irreparable harm in students, that harm is significantly outweighed by the harm caused by the unmasked spread of the disease, particularly among children. That's what the case says. So the premise of this amendment simply doesn't connect with the actual language of this case. But let's set that aside. Now let's look at the merits of what they're trying to do here, which is to just have the executive order end in a couple days. And I think we've heard this. Look, if we had a vote on this floor to say that we're going to end COVID-19, that the virus was going to go away and no one was going to get sick and no one was going to die, it would pass overwhelmingly. We all understand that.
Probably unanimously.
Of course unanimously, Mr. Speaker, but we can't do that. We as elected officials, and we heard Chairman Abney say this, all we can do is the best with the circumstances that we have. And the circumstances that we have here are a situation where there are declining numbers, but we're still responding to the situation, Mr. Speaker. And allow students and schools and parents to prepare, they need some time. And additionally, my hope is that students and parents and teachers will take this time, if they haven't, to get vaccinated between now and March 4th. So I think it makes sense to have a ramping down period, and I urge the defeat of this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. On the amendment, Whip Chippendale, on the amendment?
Thank you, Speaker. Yes, on the amendment.
Proceed.
I'm not equipped nor inclined to engage in talking about court cases that have been decided, so I'm not going to. But I do want to point out that all of the considerations that we should be making responsibly, no one will argue with that, are what need to be debated here today respectfully. I can't help but to get stuck at the fact that our immediate neighbors of Massachusetts and Connecticut, which are no further than 15 minutes away from any point in Rhode Island, were able to summarily drop their mask mandates for children in schools. So I don't know if it's that the science tells us, capital S science tells us that it doesn't happen over state lines. I'm not sure what's going on there, but just the logical me has to question, how can it be so horrible in Little Rhodey when we're surrounded by states that have acknowledged and recognized what this amendment is seeking to do? And not only are we surrounded by states, but this country is on a daily basis increasing state by state with just summarily dismissing the mask mandates for children. So legal arguments aside and semantic dissection of decisions, I think is less helpful than just a more reasoned approach. And my reasoning just tells me that it is time for this amendment. There's no other time but now. Thank you.
Thank you, Whip. Representative Place, please. And then we'll go to Representative Knight.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this amendment. Some irreparable harm. So it doesn't have to be entirely irreparable harm, but just some's okay. Some irreparable harm to our kids is okay. I don't buy that. My daughter's 2 years old now, and I've seen the difference in language skills amongst kids in not only her age group, but those that are that are older than her. And it's not close. The kids that I'm seeing that attend daycares with masks on a daily basis, it's not a lie. These kids are having issues learning how to speak the language. They make the noises. It's like we all take our masks off to be heard. Everybody gets up here and takes their masks off to be heard. We always see everybody getting up, taking your mask off to be heard because it's difficult to be heard. Well, the teachers aren't allowed to do that. The instructors in these daycares aren't allowed to do that. So what the kids wind up hearing is tone and rhythm of voice, but not enunciation. And that's literally, these are things that I've heard children 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years older than my daughter in different situations. That's how they're speaking the English language. They can't enunciate words because they can't hear through the masks. Are we going to protect the kids or not? If we're going to protect the kids, then we end it now. All due respect to the executive, Mr. Speaker. He says he's going to allow it to happen. Well, I believe it's healthy to, in some cases, well, in all cases as the legislative branch, to have doubt in what the executive branch the executive branch says they're going to do. It's our responsibility. People have said tough decisions. We've been in this for 2 years. This is the first time we've taken something up. Let's make the right decision. in my mind, it's not tough. It may be tough for you, but it's very easy. Support this amendment, take the masks off the kids, and let's start to get back to recovery for these kids, because we're talking about years. These things don't get fixed overnight. Let's stop it now. Let's stop the harm from taking place so they can start to recover. We can't wait a week. We can't wait 2 weeks. Let's just do it. Representative Newberry stated statistics, facts. Let's get it over with. Let's end the mask mandate on our kids in schools. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Representative, he's no light. There on the amendment, there are no other lights. Clerk, oh, I'm sorry, Leader Filippi. Leader Filippi, go right ahead.
Fast, Mr. Speaker.
Well, I'm trying.
No, I get it. I appreciate that. And I really appreciate the comments of my counterpart, Leader Błaszczykowski. I'm glad you acknowledge that there may have been some harm, because the Department of Health had the tenacity to come before us and say there's no harm to kids whatsoever because of masks. Their PR representative came and made that ridiculous representation to us. And that was probably about half hour before all the parents came in and started with tears in their eyes explaining how their kids are being harmed by this, before the teachers came in and started explaining how their students were being harmed by this. My good friend, Chairman Abney, someone who I consider a mentor, you had said that this is, don't succumb to politics, right? Don't succumb to politics, and we can't have a speedy withdrawal. Respectfully, this isn't us pulling out of Afghanistan or something. You know, we could just stop this. And I'll explain to you why politics is being played. By us voting for this amendment, it's getting away from politics. Politics is continuing the mask mandate. And here's why. The evidence is in. Kids have near zero risk of COVID. Tomorrow, the masks come off the adults. Are we masking kids to protect unmasked adults? That's absurd. What we're really doing, in my opinion, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Speaker, is it's clear that the masks aren't working on kids, don't mean anything to kids, are hurting children. The balance of the equities is against wearing masks on our children. But instead of acknowledging the fact that many of our leaders have been wrong, we're trying to ramp it down, to say in 3 weeks it's going to be okay. What the governor's doing, and respectfully what this body is doing, is playing politics by passing this extension and voting down this amendment, if you do, because the verdict is in. We're hurting our kids, and instead of acknowledging that, we're playing with their health more and more for 3 more weeks of masking in order to prevent the public from realizing the truth. And the truth is that we've been wrong. Our leaders have been wrong. We should have never masked up these kids, and if maybe at some point we should have, they should have come off months ago. We're hurting our children, we continue to hurt our children, and we will continue to hurt our children to protect our political rear ends. And that's the truth. So to the governor, you should please just rescind the order if we don't do it in this amendment. 3 more weeks of incarceration, I think the word was. 3 more weeks of incarceration for our children. It's mass incarceration. It's not right. It's not right. We're hurting our kids. We need to sacrifice for our kids, not the other way around. The adults are taking off their masks tomorrow. But our kids have to wear them who have near zero risk of COVID. That's not rational. That's politics.
Thank you, Leader. Representative Quattrochi, please. And then I'll go to Representative Morgan after that. And that will be the last light on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I obviously rise in full support of this amendment. We've certainly come a long way from the famous quote by FDR that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Now we seem to want to live in, or are suggested to live in perpetual fear, waiting for the next strain. But anyways, I believe that if we don't pass this amendment, this chamber is acting in cowardice, and certainly the governor is. If we don't pass this, essentially what we're doing is we're kicking all the people that everyone's afraid of. I'm not afraid of our constituents, but we're kicking them to the school committees. this is an act of cowardice. We can't make a decision. We can't, on behalf of our children. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Representative Morgan. Representative McLaughlin, did you want to speak on the bill or on the amendment? Because your light was lit before Representative Newberry put his amendment in play. I can come back to you. I just want to know if it's on the amendment or the bill.
That would be on the bill itself.
Okay, then the last light will be Representative Morgan, and then I will go to you and Representative Azzanaro on the bill. Representative Morgan, please. On the amendment, please.
Thank you, Speaker. We as a body have sat back and allowed our children to be irreparably harmed for far too long. How much harm is acceptable to us? To me, it's not acceptable at all. Our children, for the rest of their life, will bear the burden of these last 2 years of being kept at home, of being masked, their health, their physical health, their mental health, their educational performance is all being harmed. And we sit on our hands and say it's okay. It's not okay. It's not okay for one more day. Our children are our future, and we are allowing that future to be dimmed by making children wear cloth masks that do nothing to protect them or any adult or other person that is in their presence. These masks do nothing but hurt our children. And I'm ashamed that we as adults are allowing it to happen. We've had the ability for months to act, and we have ignored our responsibility. We have an opportunity today, right now, to say enough. Not one more child with depression, not one more child who feels suicidal, not one more child who can't develop their language skills or their social skills or their educational potential. This amendment allows us to speak up for children, and I hope you support it.
Thank you, Representative Morgan. Representative Roberts, on the amendment or on the bill? Proceed.
Thank you.
The last light, and I'm going to hold everyone to it. Go ahead.
Well, I just want to say that, first of all, I know that my email has been so overwhelmed it is not possible to respond to that many people. And it's definitely not exclusive to just my district. It's coming from many parts of this state. So I am convinced that most of us in here are seeing these emails. One thing I definitely know for sure is that the parents, the teachers, and the children have spoken. They want the children unmasked. Enough is enough. It's time for their voices to be heard. We were elected. Our constituents put their trust in us, okay, to have their voices heard, not our will. Okay, that's where we're making a mistake here, okay? We need to do what they have elected us to do. They want to be represented. I've had many emails, people reaching out saying, I know you're not my rep, but I'm not being represented. So for any of you that are not responding, and this is another common thing I've heard, that a lot of people, unfortunately, and I don't want to sound partisan, okay, but a lot of people I heard in the Democrat Party, and I don't mean all of you, because I know that there are some good people here, some were not responding. Some were not responding. I'm sorry to have to break down the truth for you, but some were not responding. Okay? And what happened was I ended up doing...
Representative Roberts, please just, I don't want to shut you off. I want to have a discourse and a debate, but please stick to the amendment. Thank you.
Basically, the bottom line is I've heard many people, and I'm going to use their words, what they've said is stop suffocating our children. I think we need to listen. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no other lights. Clerk, unlock the machine. On the amendment, all those against, please vote red. Any opposed, any in favor, please vote green. On the amendment. All members, please vote. Clerk, lock the machine. There are 10 votes in the affirmative. There are 56 votes in the negative. The amendment fails. We are now back on the bill. Representative Agello, please. On the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am a little weary of the hyperbole, and I'll speak with my mask on, and I can breathe with my mask on. And I suspect that surgeons, when they're wearing masks, can breathe as they're doing the surgery. So that's one point about masks. Is there anyone in the room, Mr. Speaker? Is there anyone in the room who can't understand me? Thank you. Thank you. People can be understood when they speak with a mask on. People can breathe when they're wearing a mask. And this talk about soft masks, cloth masks not being effective, they are not as effective as the KN95 mask I'm wearing or a surgical mask. They're not as effective as the N95 mask, which I guess is the peak there. But they are effective. They're better than nothing. Wouldn't we all rather have the surgeon, if a cloth mask was the only choice, wouldn't we rather have the surgeon be wearing a cloth mask? Let's stick to the facts and let's try and keep the tone down. And one other thing I'd like to remind the body, I read in the paper recently, I don't know whether it was last week or this week, but Hassenfeld Institute, based at Bryant University in Rhode Island, did a poll. 80% of parents in Rhode Island approve of the mask mandate. We are hearing from a very loud and very vocal minority. And I'm afraid that that loud and vocal minority of parents is frightening their children. If I assume that my child is going to be hurt by wearing a mask, and I treat the child that way, I let the child know that I believe that, what can I possibly expect in that result? I am actually somewhat disappointed. I would have voted for a longer extension of the executive order authority, but I think I've said my say.
Thank you, Representative.
And I kept my mask on.
We noticed. Thank you. Chairman Azanaro, and then Representative Newberry. Chairman.
Thank you, Speaker. I'll be very brief, as I usually am. Like everyone in this room, I received hundreds of emails saying, don't vote for this. But then I read some letters from 2 or 3 doctors or 4 doctors and scientists that are saying we're on the downward slope right now, but it's too soon to unmask right now. That's why I am going to vote in favor of this resolution. I think it's the right thing to do at this time. Myself, I would rather err on the side of caution than to err at all. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Newberry, please, for the second time.
Actually, this is not about masks. This is about the other issue with the bill that I think, because of all the public attention to the masking issue, has been lost. And that's sort of, I don't want to call it a constitutional question, but it is. It's more a question of balance of powers. The original, well, first of all, somebody said earlier that we thought we were done with this, and now we think we're about to be done with it. We thought we were done with this last June. We ended the state of emergency. I think we all agreed with that. And then in the middle of August, August 19, the governor comes out with declaring a disaster emergency for new COVID-19 variants, and that's what we're being asked to continue. I thought he made a mockery of us, Mr. Speaker. I suspect you agreed. I think he had other reasons at that time other than health for issuing that declaration. I think a lot of it had to do with financial issues and fighting with the legislature about money. But I don't know that for a fact. There are some things that came up at the hearing that it makes sense to extend at the moment. They've already been mentioned by a few folks, the retired teachers coming back to fill in for longer periods of time. There's a couple of others. I'd have no problem if we codified temporary extensions with sunset clauses of a lot of the individual non-mask issues. In fact, I think most of them I was okay with. But to just extend the state of emergency, Mr. Speaker, is a mistake by this body, because it essentially acknowledges that what the governor has been doing is okay and it's been proper, and it is not. I find it disrespectful of us as a body, disrespectful of the Senate. I would, if this bill did not involve an extension of a mask requirement, and it did not involve an extension of the disaster emergency declaration, but it did involve certain targeted codified items, I would vote for it. But for that reason alone, I'm not going to vote for it. I find it very difficult to declare that we are living in a disaster emergency. You know, last Saturday, I remember going out to lunch at a local restaurant where, I'm not going to name it because I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but let's just say you would never have known that masks existed anywhere. I remember watching, I wasn't watching it, but I happened to notice at the bar on the TV, there was a packed PC Marquette game. And yet we're living in a state of emergency. It makes no sense at all. And it goes back to the point I made earlier. You know, people do watch us and they question whether or not they should take government seriously. People only listen and obey their government when they respect what government does. They don't have to like it or agree with it. But when they start to disrespect what the government does, that breeds long-term problems and trust, and we don't want that. So I think, I know it's not going to happen now, but I really think if we had redrafted this, and I brought this up at the hearing, to target certain things and give an extension, the mask issue might have been its own fight. But other than that, we could have done this. I just think we're all deferring far too much to the second floor. And I don't think the third floor should do that.
Thank you, Representative Newberry. Representative Rangel Vassar, please. The last light.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For just a few minutes, I want to concur with Rep. Ajello to say that I am wearing my mask, and I've been wearing it as a teacher, practicing teacher. I teach school, high school. I've been wearing it since 7:50 this morning. Took it out for half an hour to have lunch, and I will be wearing it, and I hope our kids wear it until we get the numbers totally down. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have more lights, many more lights. Representative McLaughlin, please. You can sit if you want, Jim. Please go.
I'd rather, thank you, Speaker. Mr. Speaker and members of the House, you know, what I'd like to say is, it's been a political football for the last 2 years. We all know it, okay? What does our Constitution say? Our Constitution says, basically, you can't make anybody get a shot if they don't want it. As someone who's had COVID twice, okay, been kicked in the ass twice, do I have any faith in the CDC? No. All right, so many mixed messages that come out. But I will say this, okay, we're over the hump, okay? But, hang on, just sorry about that. Shut that off. Thanks. But basically what I'd like to reiterate to other people, it's been a tough 2 years, for everybody. The General Assembly 2 years ago in March, when this hit, all right, no one person should have the final say. Our Constitution says that. It's up to this General Assembly, this body, to decide, okay? And we're taking the right steps right now. We've got a new governor, and what I'd like to say is, he's asking for 45 days. I don't think that's a lot. Many of you have small districts. I have a district in Central Falls which was hit very, very hard with COVID. 45 days is not a long time to basically, end the mask, As for me, I'd say end it tomorrow. But we've got other people at stake. We've got children at stake, okay? We've got carriers that people don't even realize. You have short-term COVID with a lifespan of 10 days, but you also have long-term COVID. You're probably not aware of it, okay? That can be spread for 90 days. So with that said, I will not, I will be supporting this 45-day resolution, all right?
Thank you very much, Representative.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we're going to get over this, so let's work in unity, let's work together.
Thank you. Whip Chippendale and then Deputy Speaker Lima, please. Deputy Speaker will be the last light. Again.
For the moment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think a lot of what was said from all folks who got up and spoke, at least in part, was right on the money. I'm always fond of military references, so thank you to the chairman for that. Because it is easy to understand if you understand how military operations work, et cetera, et cetera. And I kind of view this a little bit differently. This isn't a hasty retreat, so to speak. We are doing this in stages, as the honorable chairman suggested, and eliminating it right now today wouldn't be irresponsible. It wouldn't be a withdrawal under hostile fire. It would be doing the right thing, because the next phase of what we have to do, Mr. Speaker, as a state to rebuild this is to work on staffing in hospitals, which is decimated, and they're not coming back to a large degree. Nursing to patient ratios have gone through the roof. I get a death count every morning when my daughter comes home after working a 14-hour shift overnight from her hospital. They're worn out, they're burnt out. The same applies to the honorable profession of teaching. And folks in both of those areas, not just nurses, all medical professionals, they're assessing their options. And if there is a viable option for them, whether it's to work in Connecticut or to become a different profession, whatever, they're taking advantage of that. We're not seeing these professions come back quickly enough. That is going to take, I'm afraid, decades to fix. That doesn't even cover what we've done to our economy. The recovery from the economic devastation of the virus and what it initially caused, and then exacerbated by the inaction of government, will take decades, maybe even generations to restore. We do have to come down here and make tough decisions. There's no doubt about that. I think we should have started to take that responsibility seriously about 1.5 to 2 years ago, myself, but here we are. We're taking a half measure. The thing that I've found most distasteful, and our friend Chairman Abney did work this into his remarks, is the politics of it all. We're all tired of it, regardless of what letters after our names. We've all seen families torn apart over this issue, and it oftentimes boils down to political arguments. And we've seen friends that have been friends forever will never speak to each other again. The damage from the politics of this has worn us down as a society, never mind those of us who volunteer for this. It's wearing everyone down. That is undermining any faith in government we should expect our constituents to have. Rightfully so. They should be angry at all of us. We needed to act more swiftly. We should have acted more swiftly. This does not go far enough. It's not, we can't act soon enough to start repairing all of those things I spoke of. The nursing crisis, staffing crisis, the teacher crisis, the devastation to the economy, the staffing crisis in every industry. All of this was born out of government policy. That has to end. The sooner we end it, the sooner we can start to repair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker Lima, and then Chairwoman Fogarty, hopefully the last light. I'm not going to say that again, because every time I say the last light, more lights come on, so let's have at it. Deputy Speaker Lima, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the House. To my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, I share your concerns about the mask. But Representative Newberry, Leader, I want you to support this, and I'm going to tell you why. There's some very, very, very important executive orders in here. I want to refer you to Executive Order 22-07. It was the governor of this state, Governor McKee, who had the courage to put a moratorium on the mandatory staffing in nursing homes, the highest in the country, 4.6. Nursing homes have closed. Nursing homes have been sold to out-of-state companies, chains, which traditionally are not as good as home nursing homes. We weren't going to do anything about that. People didn't want it for whatever reason, but the governor had the courage to put a moratorium on that to stop the penalties because nursing homes would not survive. Then where do our elderly people go? So that's an example of one that I know you agree with, that is an important executive order that has to stay there so that the governor can protect these nursing homes. He had the courage to do it. Kudos to you, Governor McKee. So reconsider your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Chairwoman Fogarty, and then we're just going to keep continuing. Go ahead, Chairwoman Fogarty.
I'm sorry, Speaker, to bring on more lights for you. I just wanted to go back to 2 weeks ago today. 2 weeks ago today, there was a resolution that was brought forward by Representative Fenton Fung, signed by Representative Newberry, Filippi, and Chippendale, plus a few other representatives, thanking the FEMA and the National Disaster Medical System team, doctors, nurses, and their staffs to come into Rhode Island Hospital and Kent County Hospital. We all thanked, we all clapped, and we thought it was wonderful. That was 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. We were all happy about it. 2 weeks later, we're debating about this. Let's go back to the beginning. It was called COVID-19. It was a novel virus. Novel being new, something we've never ever seen before. We saw COVID-19. We saw the Delta variant. We saw Omicron. We don't know if there's going to be something else coming on down the line. So by letting this mask order drop, we could be having something else happen. And we might have to go back to it, so just brace everybody for that. We don't know what's going to happen because this is novel. Secondly, we have February vacation coming up in a couple of weeks within this time period. Do you remember Christmas time? Do you remember Thanksgiving? The flare-ups, everything shot up. Christmas came, things shot up. New Year's, everything shot up. 2 weeks later, we have the FEMA and the medical disaster teams coming into our hospitals. A lot of people are probably going to go to Florida. That place is like a petri dish down there. So some of these kids are going to be coming back and bringing back who knows what. And then they're coming back into the school for another week with their friends. Are we going to see another spike? We possibly could see another spike. So just to prepare yourselves for what, we don't know what's coming in front of us. And for the letters that we got, I got 2 out of my district, 2 people out of my district. I have a hell of a lot more people in my district who want to keep the masks on and want to protect. My district has been highly vaccinated. They're an educated district. I have the university. I have a lot of smart people in there. There's a lot of people that support this and support some of these things being kept in place, and including the nursing home. It's a very good point. I appreciate that, Representative Lima. So again, we don't know what's coming, but brace yourselves because something else. I don't want to be the gloom and doom. I wear this mask 9 hours a day when I go to work. 9 hours. I'm used to it. My nephew goes to school, has his Batman, his Hulk. He doesn't care about wearing it. He loves it. Whatever, every day he changes it. So these kids are resilient. We've closed schools down. Parents go crazy. Go crazy. The kids. They're resilient. I've seen it happen before. They're going to wear their masks. They're going to keep them on. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Leader Filippi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the South Kingstown School Committee, which voted the other night to end the mask mandate as soon as the governor allows it. Representative Fogarty's district as well as mine. To my friend Representative Lima, I understand there may be some good things in the governor's executive orders that we're continuing, but that isn't the point. We should be drafting a bill to continue those for the next 45 days instead of continuing a state of emergency, because in that state of emergency, the governor acts as the legislature. He can suspend laws and basically create laws out of whole cloth with a pen. 2 years on, we've been in a state of emergency where the governor has been acting as the legislature. That's okay when we can't meet. Look at us, we're all here. We had a rally out in the rotunda for the veterans tax exemption, a Republican proposal for the past 9 years. I'm glad the governor put it in his budget, but we just had a rally. We have public committee meetings. This room is packed. We can pass laws. We can do it quick, Mr. Speaker. We do it all the time when we have to. So the notion that we're going to wait till the last minute and then say, if we don't pass this, all these executive orders that are going to expire, I really think that's a false argument. Because really, we should have put in a bill, someone should have put in a bill, respectfully, that continued the executive orders that we wanted, and we can end the state of emergency. Because we're destroying the term state of emergency. I remember standing here about a year ago, and I said, the boy that cried wolf, the governor that cried emergency. And some people got very upset. I think I've been proven right. Another year on, we're hanging out, there's concerts, the Dunk is filled, the Ryan Center is filled. Who knows what's gonna happen this weekend for the Super Bowl? I'm sure it's gonna be a lot of fun, and I hope everyone has a good time. Mask on or mask off, it's your choice. But the notion that we're allowing the governor to exercise our constitutional function, our legislative function, with not much oversight, respectfully, it's an insult to the people, it's an insult to our state constitution. We shouldn't be doing it. We're here, we're meeting. We should not be allowing the governor to be the super legislature. He can repeal any law we've passed, strike it out. He can pass a new law. Who ever heard of such a thing? That's not the type of government we have in this country. We have a separation of powers. We don't have an executive branch that's also a legislative branch. I can reference you to some historical things back in old Europe where that did not go too well. So we need to respect the rule of law. We're denigrating the rule of law by continuing this. So, Representative Lima, that's my response to your well-reasoned argument. Thank you very much. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. There are no other lights. Clerk, unlock the machine. All those in favor vote green, and any against vote red. I want to be quick. All members, please vote. Clerk, please lock the machine. There are 50 in the affirmative, 17 in the negative. The resolution prevails.